friends, I'm here today with another read aloud. Today our story is going to be a little bit different from some of the others that we read. It is going to be a non-fiction book. So a couple of weeks ago when we were back at school, we talked about the difference between fiction and non-fiction. Do you remember what we said? Do you remember what the differences were? Fiction stories are pretend. They're not real. They're fake stories. So The Three Little Pigs is an example of a fiction. Do pigs really talk? Do they really build houses out of straw and hay and bricks? No. So it's not a true story. It's fun, but it's make-believe. Nonfiction, on the other hand, are real stories. They have real facts in them. So today we are going to read a story about honeybees. And everything in this story is true. It's a fact. It's real. This story is non-fiction. Honeybees. Look, a honeybee. Buzzing through a warm afternoon, a little worker bee dips into a colorful flower again and again and again. What do you think they're doing with that flower? From each flower, she collects a sweet liquid called nectar. She sips the runny nectar through her straw-like tongue and stores it in a special just for honey tummy. And she uses that to sip up the nectar like a straw. Flower pollen dusts the bee like fluffy golden snow. Every once in a while, she stops, rolls the pollen into balls, and stuffs these into tiny sacs on her back legs. Why do you think she stores the pollen on her legs? What do you think she's going to do with it? Honey, I'm home. When the bee is so heavy with nectar and pollen, she can barely fly, she heads home to the hive. Thousands of other workers are arriving home too. So there's all kinds of worker bees, thousands it said. They all go out and they collect nectar and pollen. And what are they going to do with that nectar and pollen? Inside the hive, the air hums with excitement. Bees bustle to and fro. The whole colony works together for its queen. As long as she is safe and healthy, so is the hive. Worker bees bring her food and carry out her waste. They fan their wings to keep the hive cool. So all the worker bees help take care of the queen. One of the most important jobs in the hive is caring for the queen's many eggs. Through spring and summer, she lays up to 2,000 eggs per day. That's a lot of eggs. She wiggles her abdomen down into a honeycomb and drops each egg into its own 6-walled cell. An egg's shell melts away and, hello, larva. The chubby baby looks nothing like a bee, yet. For 3 days, the larva is fed a milky mush called royal jelly. Then it is switched to a honey pollen mixture called bee bread. So when the eggs hatch, they don't look like a bee yet. They look like these little worms. And they're called larvae. And each larva weaves a cocoon, and inside its body keeps growing and changing. So kind of like a butterfly. It goes inside of this little shell type thing called a cocoon, and its body changes from that little wormy looking larva to a bee. Crawl! Finally, a honey bee chews open its cocoon and climbs out of its cozy cell. Ta-da! Honeybees keep their hive clean and neat, so the new bee's first job is to clean her room. Hives can be found in unusual places. Many honeybees live in human-made hives. A beekeeper opens a hive to remove part of the sticky golden honey. Yum! So that's a person's job. They take care of bees. They make hives for the bees, and then the bees live in there and they make their honey, and then the beekeepers can collect the honey. That's their job. And if you look, they have to wear a special outfit, a uniform, so that the bees don't sting them. Bye-bye, Buzzy. Hope you find a lot of lovely flowers. Busy as a bee. There's plenty of work to do in a beehive. Every worker does each of these jobs in order, moving from one to the next every few days during her 6 weeks of life. First, they clean out their cells. Then, second, they feed the queen and the larva. Third, they build and repair their honeycombs. 4, they make honey from nectar. 5, they guard the hive entrance. And 6, they fly out to collect more nectar. So that's the order of their day. An interesting fact, worker bees are always female. That means they're all girls. All the worker bees are girls. And each hive only has one queen, and she's the only one that can lay eggs. Those bees do a lot of work through the day. They have a lot of chores. What's one chore that you do at home? Maybe you clean out your room just like they clean out their cells. Maybe you help make dinner. They make their nectar. They make their honey. More honey, please. Bees make honey from flower nectar. They store it in the topmost cells of their honeycomb. They eat both honey and pollen. So earlier in our story, it talked about how they go out to flowers and they collect nectar with their straw-like tongue, and they get pollen on the back of their legs. So they take that back to their hive and they make honey out of it. And then they eat the honey, and they can also eat the pollen. In one day, a worker bee brings home enough nectar to make only a little bit of honey. But a hive might have 50,000 or more bees. So working together, since there's so many of them, they can make as much as 2 pounds of honey a day. And that's enough to fill 2 jars. The bee is the key. When bees fly from flower to flower, tiny grains of pollen stick to their feet and then get dropped off on another flower. That's called pollination, and it's what helps flowers make more flowers. Bees pollinate many food crops too. So a bee lands on a flower, and he gets all that pollen on his legs, and then he flies over here to this flower, and all that pollen that was on his legs, some of it falls off onto that new flower. And that's how they make new flowers grow. Without bees, we couldn't enjoy things like apples, blueberries, cherries, cucumbers, strawberries, or melons. Bees are important to many ecosystems, so they help us out a lot. You can help them by planting nectar-rich flowers like daisies and marigolds, and blue flowers like salvia. Bees seem to like the color blue. You might also plant any of the fruits or berries mentioned above, as well as broccoli, pumpkins, and tomatoes. So I know sometimes we get a little scared when we see a bee because we're afraid of their stinger, but bees are actually very helpful for us. So as long as you leave those bees alone, just don't go near their hive, then they shouldn't bother you too much. They just get scared just like we do, and that's when they sting. Waggle dance. When a worker bee returns to the hive, it sometimes does a waggle dance. The special wiggle waggle moves are actually directions that show other workers where to go to find flowers. Can you look at the picture and waggle dance like a honeybee? So the little bees do a little dance, and they're kind of making a map to show the other bees where to go and get more nectar and pollen from other flowers. How cool is that? That is the end of our story about honeybees. I hope you learned all kinds of interesting facts. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks. I'll see you again. Bye.